All right, you guys, we're getting ready to read chapters 28, 29, 30, and 31. And our first chapter, 28, is called Diwali Dusk. And I wanted to look up a little bit about Diwali. And Diwali is called the Indian Festival of Lights, and it's their biggest holiday of the year. It's kind of like Christmas is to us. I'm going to show you some pictures. One of the flowers that you see that they use a lot in their celebrations and weddings, and I noticed in a lot of these pictures as I looked up things about Diwali, is marigolds, different colors of marigolds. In the fall, in America, you'll see a lot of marigolds, and typically they're orange flowers, and there's something that's called hardy, and what that means is they will come back. They're annuals; they'll come back every year. They seed themselves if they're left undisturbed. But um, Diwali is, as I said, one of the most important holidays of the year. Um, and it gets its name from this row of clay lamps um, that that Indians light outside their homes to symbolize the inner light that protects from spiritual darkness. And this festival is important to Hindus, as I said earlier, as Christmas. The Christmas holiday is to Christians. And it says that over the centuries, Diwali has become a national festival that's also enjoyed by non Hindu communities. Jainism is sort of akin to Hinduism, and Diwali marks the nirvana or spiritual awakening of Lord Maha, Mahavari. I looked this up and then I can't even get it out. And Sikhism, which is sort of reminds you a little bit of um, Hinduism, but Sikhs are the ones that you will see that will have the white turbans on their head. The men in the Sikh religion don't cut their hair. They have something called a top knot. Like they'll have all their hair up in a ponytail and it'll be on the top knot on their hair. I'll try to find some pictures of that and show that to you. There are many of those people um, that practice the Sikh religion in America, but it honors the day that Guru Hargobindi Ji, which is Sir. That's Guru is the master, and Ji is Sir. He was the sixth Sikh guru, and he was freed from imprisonment. Buddhists in India celebrate Diwali as well, and there's like a picture of Lord Krishna, um, and he's one of their gods. They call them Lord. It talks about in northern India they celebrate the story of King Rama. Um, and in southern India, they celebrate the day of Lord Krishna. He defeated this demon. In western India, the festival marks the day that Lord Vishnu, the preserver, um, sent the demon King Bali to rule the netherworld, which would be like a different name for, I guess, what Christians would call hell. But Diwali is celebrated over 5 days. It says day one, people clean their homes and shop for gold or kitchen utensils to help bring good fortune. Day two, people decorate their homes with clay lamps and create design patterns like in the pictures we saw called rangoli on the floor using colored powders or sand. It kind of looks like to me, guys, like that colored, um, like that vermilion we were looking at earlier that the brides would put in their hair, but it reminds me a little bit of that temper paint that we were talking about that you use in art class that you mix with water to paint with, that powdery paint. It kind of reminds you of how that looks. Day three, on the main day of the festival, families gather together for Lakshmi Puja. Remember, that was the goddess of wealth. A prayer to goddess Lakshmi, followed by mouth-watering feasts and fireworks festivities. Remember, that was the goddess Lakshmi, the picture that the tea shop auntie had hanging on her wall. Day four, this is the first day of the new year when friends and relatives visit with gifts and best wishes for the season. And day five, brothers visit their married sisters who welcome them with love and a lavish meal. So there's a lot of tradition. It's a lot. There's a lot of um, they believe in a lot of tradition, but it's a lot for them. It's a lot about luck and different things when it comes to Hinduism and those types of Eastern religions. And you see, there's a lot of beautiful, colorful things. I want to show you this little kind of mini video here. And you're seeing in India, one of the most significant festivals is Diwali, or the Festival of Lights. It's a 5-day celebration that includes good food, fireworks, colored sand, and special candles and lamps. And what you're seeing here is the Taj Mahal, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world. But let's watch it.
At any time of year, a visitor to India can be overwhelmed by its beauty and color. But a visitor in late fall is especially fortunate. The temperature will have cooled down, the monsoons will have not yet begun, and Diwali, the Festival of Lights, is at hand. Diwali is to many Indians what Christmas is to Christians. In essence, it commemorates the victory of the forces of light over the forces of darkness. To experience it fully, get up before dawn and head for the flower markets. Here, flower vendors work feverishly to create garlands of fragrant jasmine that Indians will use to adorn their homes. By dawn, they'll be sold out. Next, head for one of the temples, but go early. Later on in the day, they'll be packed. On your way over, you may see a curious sight. People hunched in front of their doorways, pouring colored sand on the ground. The sand takes the shape of a lotus blossom, a symbol of welcome. And today, millions of symbols of welcome will grace the nation's doorways. Indeed, Diwali is all about sharing. If you're staying in a private home, don't be surprised if the neighbors show up with plates of delicious holiday treats.
Happy Diwali. Happy Diwali, Abhirami.
It's also customary for families to go to the temples together on this day. They often dress in fine new outfits, purchased especially for Diwali. And if their outfits inspire you, head for a sari shop. Shops are open on Diwali, and Indian silks are justifiably famous for their beauty. They're just one of the ways India spruces up and gets into the holiday spirit.
So this is an occasion for all of us to rejoice and be with the family and enjoy all the good things in life. So we buy good clothes and make good food.
And everywhere there are lights. If you head to major commercial districts throughout India, you'll find colorful displays comparable to Christmas lights in Western cities. Some cities also put on spectacular public displays of fireworks, like this one in Delhi. But no matter where you are, there are smaller, more intimate fireworks displays. A long day of celebrations is coming to an end, and it's going out with a bang.
All right, so as you can see, it's a pretty big deal to them. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. All right, so let's start with the Diwali Dusk. When we read before, let me look back here. Got to refresh my brain a little bit. We were talking a little bit about them eating and living in this. They decided to stay in the graveyard. And do you remember the kids that were wandering around in the graveyard? And Ruku was really hungry, and she kept going, hungry. And Ruku, she talks a little slow because of her handicap, and in the dark in the graveyard. And there's a superstition of, they're very superstitious people. Hindu people are, and Indian people are. And so when they heard Ruku going hungry, they thought it was a ghost, and it freaked them out, and they ran away. And they were talking about who it was. And a rule said it's just rich kids, because who else would have time to be out here wandering around in graveyards or whatever. So they all thought that they got a good laugh out of that. And then they made the decision that the graveyard, because of that fear that people had of the graveyard being haunted, that would be one of the safest places for them to be. And that kind of made a text to text connection for me, because that reminded me of Robin Hood. I don't know if you've ever read Robin Hood or watched any of the Robin Hood movies, but one of the Robin Hood and his merry men stayed in Sherwood Forest, and one of the reasons that they could live safely in Sherwood Forest is because there was a superstition that Sherwood Forest was haunted, and one of the reasons that people believed it was haunted was because the merry men made sure that it sounded and looked haunted. So when people went into the forest, they made noises and did things to think that. So they decided the graveyard would be even safer because of that issue. Okay. So they decided to stay put in the graveyard for that reason. All right. Diwali Dusk. That morning, the three of us brushed our teeth using neem twigs, like Amma said people had done in the old days. The twigs were bitter, so you refused to use them, plus you were busy sneezing. Diwali is today and tomorrow, Arul said, so shops won't be open. No point in trying to search for a new waste smart man. But we should still try to collect as much as we can, so we'll have a lot to sell by the day after tomorrow. Soon, Muthu said confidently. We'll have tons of stuff, and we'll find a nice waste smart man who'll give us a lot of money, and we'll buy 5 packages of those orange cream biscuits. Orange uncle, you said. An uncle who's an orange? Muthu said. Can we nibble on him? It'll make a nice change from bananas. I explained about the gardener who'd thrown an orange at us. Let's try our luck there, I suggested. At least if he chases us away again, we might get another orange. Any policemen there, Muthu wanted to know, or watchmen? No, but it was a rich neighborhood, so maybe they'll pay more for Ruku's necklaces. Or maybe they got rich by being stingier, so they'll pay less, Muthu said. The gardener was weeding a flower bed. He glanced up as though he could feel my eyes on him. I see you're back. He wiped his sweaty brow. And you've found work, apparently. One look at Arul's sack, not to mention our filthy clothes, showed him we were in the rag picking business, because he said, wait, I'll get you some bottles. He disappeared around the back of the house and reappeared carrying a few glass bottles. He was dropping them into Arul's sack when the rich girl bounded out of the house, flounced over to us in her frilly dress. Prabha, you'll get wet. Her mother followed her out, unfurling an umbrella. Your clothes are so dirty. Admiration and shock mixed together in Prabha's voice. My mummy would never let me get so dirty. Cootie jumped up and licked her hand. Mummy, he's such a friendly doggy, Prabha said. Please, can I have him? He's ours, I told her. Please, Mummy, the girl wheedled like she hadn't heard me. Did she think poor low-caste kids like us didn't count? Rich kids, Earl muttered, think they can get anything they want. Cootie shook raindrops off his coat, splattering the mother's sari. She didn't seem to mind. She stooped down to pet him. Although she murmured, we probably shouldn't pet stray dogs, but he can't be dangerous if he's with these children. Cootie seemed to have taken an instant liking to Prabha and her mother, who was now looking Cootie over, thoroughly examining his eyes and even his teeth. Skinny, but a healthy coat, she said. Though he'd probably run away if we did buy him. He's not for sale, I said. He won't run away, Mummy, the girl stroked Cootie's muzzle. I'll brush his coat so it shines like silk and… Cootie, come here. I didn't need to make friends with this silly rich girl. Neither did he. Now. To my satisfaction, Cootie obeyed at once, waggling his tail. I know you said he wasn't for sale, but as Prabha's taken a liking to him, the mother gave me a hesitant smile. Would you consider parting with him for, let's say, 2,000 rupees? 2,000 rupees? My head spun just trying to think of that number, with 3 beautiful, fat zeros behind it. Not that it mattered. I told you he wasn't for sale. Sure? The mother said. Very, I said. Probably for the best, the mother said. Mummy, you could vaccinate him, Prabha wheedled. Please, may I get him some food? The mother glanced at me. Okay, I said. I couldn't deprive Cootie the chance to taste rich people's food. The girl scampered back to the house, raindrops dotting her hair like silver beads. You had to have a, you had to have a store of warm, dry clothes, not to mind getting so wet. To not mind getting so wet. Just went shopping for new Diwali clothes. The mother gazed at you as you wiped your runny nose on your torn sleeve. May I offer you some old clothes and sweets? Yes, ma'am, Muthu exclaimed before I had a chance to reply. We don't need charity, I glared at him. Please accept it as payment for your work, the mother said. Without your help recycling waste, our environment would be much filthier. Stunned into silence, I stared at her. I never thought of our job as helpful, let alone worthy of payment from rich people. For the first time ever, I felt proud of the work we did. I'd have liked her better if she hadn't added, if you change your mind about the dog, let us know. The drizzle let up long enough for us to shelter behind the rain tree at the end of the avenue and change into our new old clothes. You picked out a red and green skirt. Seeing you dressed in that bright outfit made my mood brighten. Prabha's mother had also given us a raincoat, which I made you wear when the rain began again. I was worried to hear you sniffling worse than the day before. We walked past knots of people getting ready to set off firecrackers. I wanted to get you back to the graveyard quickly away from all this. When he heard the first explosion, Cootie whined and tucked his tail between his legs. But instead of plugging your ears with your fingers and shutting your eyes and cringing, as you used to do whenever firecrackers went off, you handed me your bag of beads and picked up Cootie. You whispered to Cootie and stroked him until he was calmer. You were so focused on his fear, you didn't seem to mind the noise yourself. That kind of reminds me, guys, of how um, people from coming back from war, people who are veterans, who have PTSD, they give them the service dogs. People who have been children and adults who have been through other traumatic situations, difficult situations, they use those service dogs to calm them down. People who are lonely, they're very therapeutic. Pets are. Chapter 29 is called God's Worms. Overnight it poured, and the graveyard became a swamp. You were coughing in concert with the buzzing hordes of mosquitoes, and we were all slapping and scratching our skin. Your skin looked the worst. It wasn't as just bumpy with bites. It was dotted with red, where you'd scratched so hard you'd bled. Ruku's the sweetest of us all, Muthu said. That's why mosquitoes like her best. Looks like she really needs a rest. O'Rule shot me a worried look. You girls want to stay here this morning? Ruku wants to make necklaces, your voice was hoarse, but you grabbed your bag of beads and hugged it to your chest. Ruku wants to help. We decided we'd set up a shop nearby so you wouldn't have to walk far in the rain. Slimy pink earthworms covered the sidewalk and the road, and we tried avoiding them as we walked. And you noticed one get squished beneath a cyclist's tire. Owlie! You pointed at it and rubbed your arm like you'd been hurt. Yes, I said, but it's just a worm. You looked at another squished worm on the sidewalk. Pavel, you said, laid it gently on your outstretched palm. Gee, Muthu said. Put that down, Ruku. Cootie nosed your elbow, trying to cheer you up. Aye, you pointed at the muddy earth surrounding a tree whose trunk had busted right through the sidewalk. Look, Fiji. Yes, those worms are alive, Ruku. Not dead, you remarked. Yes, I said. They're better off there in the mud, for sure. Pavam, you repeated. That worm's dead, Ruku, I tried to explain. Death was one of those things, like money, that I wasn't sure how well you understood. It's never going to move again, ever. You ran a finger along the dead worm's body, then picked it up again and put it on the earth around the tree. I think Ruku's hoping they'll come back to life if she puts them on the earth, Arul said. After all, the dead ones are only on the road or the sidewalk. You're trying to save them, aren't you, Ruku? Ruku's the best helper. You found another dead worm on the pavement and put it on the earth. Arul want to help? Can Ruku? Can't Ruku, he bit his lip and let a lifeless worm dangle between his fingers before he dropped it on the wet earth. They're dead, gone. You can't bring them back to life. None of us can. You pouted but refused to stop. transporting a third worm from the gray concrete onto the grassy earth. Maybe we're God's worms, Muthu said suddenly. What? Arul glared at him. I'm not being disrespectful, boss, Muthu stared at the thickening rain. God must be so high up, we must look like worms to him. So when we're starving, he probably just feels like we feel when we see a worm die. A little sad, but not much. I guess God feels a little bit sad for us, but not enough to send us all food. I'd settle for God sending us a little less rain, I said. Then we could find our own food. Come on, Ruku. We can't stay here all day. Leave her be, Arul crouched down with you, patting your hand as you crooned to the dead worms. We're not sweet enough to mourn the worms. Someone should. So we stayed. A bus careened past and sprayed us with a fountain of rust-brown puddle water, drenching us. My blouse was plastered to my skin. Your new skirt was sopping wet below the raincoat that stretched only to your knees. You were shivering and coughing, but you started stringing beads while you sang out, Bead necklaces! Pretty bead necklaces! For the first time ever, a few beads rolled off your tired fingers, but you didn't stop until every last bead was gone. Your busy fingers made so many necklaces, Ruku. I still have one, the only one we didn't sell. And nights when I just can't get to sleep here, I count the beads on it just like it's my own kind of rosary. And you guys, some of you may be Catholic and know what rosary beads look like, but here I looked up on Amazon. Here's some examples of different types of rosary beads I guess you get. And the rosary is a prayer that you pray, like a psalm prayer that you pray. But I thought that was kind of interesting that she keeps the beads in her hands. And I know it's interesting how many, because they kind of started together, the Jewish faith and the Christian faith. Some Christian faiths and Islamic faiths have some parallels to them, because I've seen Islamic people with, I don't know what theirs are called, but some type of beads that they hold when they pray. And they obviously don't have a cross on them, because Islamic people don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God, but they do believe he was, I think, a prophet of some sort. But they'll hold like bigger beads in their hand, and they'll kind of just worry the beads, as my mama used to always say, kind of touch them and feel them, and when they're saying their prayers. And some of you may be Catholic and you maybe can shed some light on this, but that's what I believe Catholic people do. They'll kind of touch them and hold them. They're kind of just like a tangible or something that we can feel and touch as we say our prayers. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. All right, chapter 30, Muthu's Tale. The money we made selling your necklaces was all we had that day. It was even less than we'd made last time. We should get Ruku some medicine, I said, and I'm not going one more night without mosquito repellent. I'd rather eat well and let the mosquitoes eat well too, Muthu argued. He wanted to spend every last coin we had on food, but a rule supported me. We ended up spending half our money on repellent and cough syrup, which meant we went to bed with half empty bellies. Worse, you wouldn't let me rub the repellent on you properly because you didn't like the sticky feel of the ointment on your skin. But in spite of the cough syrup, you weren't any better the next morning. You two stay here and rest, Arul said. Muthu and I will see if we can sell the bottles the gardener gave us. The boys set off, and I began telling you your favorite story. Cootie lay close to us, the scent of his wet fur comforting me as much as his warmth. When I got to the end about us always being together, you stared off into the distance as though you could see a palace floating in the air. The look in your eyes scared me. I didn't want you traveling all alone to our palace. I turned over and lay on my elbows and read my book to you until you dozed off. I felt so faint with hunger that it was an effort just to reread the pages while I waited for the boys to return. Bananas! Muthu's cry woke you. We crept out of the shelter. We found a new way-smart man, but he's worse than stingy. Arul's forehead was scrunched up in a worried frown. He drove a really hard bargain, gave us next to nothing for all that glass. It's a good thing Ruku's favorite food is cheap. When Muthu saw no response from you or to your favorite food, he clapped his hands in mock joy. Bananas, Ruku! It's so long since we last had any. I've forgotten how good they taste. He bit one, swallowed it right away without even seeming to chew it, and let out a full-throated belch. See? Is that a miracle or what? We can burp, though we've eaten next to nothing. Now, do you believe in God, Aka? I laughed, though I was worried about you not eating. And even Arul laughed instead of telling Muthu that he was going to hell. That was a miracle. That evening, your skin was warm to the touch, and I was overcome with guilt. I'd come to the city hoping for a better life. As soon as you were better, I needed to do more than just dream about finding a school where we could both study. The closest we'd come to that was meeting that kind woman at church. I'd thrown away the card she'd given me, but the address had stuck in my brain. Maybe we should go see that lady we met in church, Selena Auntie, tomorrow, I said. We could go to school and... School? Muthu sputtered away. No way. Why shouldn't we see what she has to offer? That woman's a liar, Muthu cried. No, she isn't. She told the priest we weren't thieves, remember? Why? Muthu demanded. Why should a well-dressed woman care enough to argue with a priest for the sake of kids she doesn't know? Because she's good? Because she's trying to catch us and sell us, Muthu said. Don't be ridiculous. You're the one being ridiculous, he said. I went to one of those schools once. It was a prison. What? Arul put an arm around Muthu. You don't have to tell. I must, Muthu said. Aka needs to know. Know what? I was scared to ask. Muthu's tone was so serious, so different from usual. You and Cootie sensed the change in him, too. You touched his cheek with a tired hand. Cootie shifted his position and laid his head on Muthu's lap. I was sold to a school once, Muthu said. A school where they taught us how to make handbags. We had to cut and sew all day. They kept us locked in. The man who called himself our owner only let us go to the bathroom at dawn, and at night, after our work was done. To eat, we only got stale rotis, if we were lucky. I shivered, but from the coldness of his voice, not the damp, chilly air. If we didn't finish as many handbags as he demanded, or didn't do whatever he said we must, he lashed us with his leather belt until we bled. I took one of Muthu's palms in my own, but he didn't respond to my touch. His mind seemed far away. One day, Muthu continued, police raided the place and took us to an orphanage, but the woman at the orphanage was a Raksashi. He shuddered. A demon. She beat us too. Not as bad as the man, but bad enough that I ran away. I found him, Arul said, picking up where Muthu had left off, hiding behind a garbage can. We shared some food, and by the next morning, I was helping you, Muthu finished. You became my boss. Not boss, Arul said. Brother. No, Muthu was firmer. If Viji can be your sister, why can't I? Boss is better, Muthu said. My stepbrother's the one who sold me. Arul looked so upset. I knew it was the first time he'd heard that part of Muthu's story. Listening to the rain plinking against the gravestones, I stared at our tarp roof that was swaying in the strengthening wind. Muthu's tale had horrified me. But I wasn't sure he was right about Selena Auntie. My back hadn't felt like a snake was crawling up it when I'd met Selena Auntie, like I'd felt with the creepy waste-smart man and the nasty bus driver. If anything, she seemed unusually kind. But could I really trust my feelings? I hadn't been on my own as long as Arul and Muthu. Surely they knew this world better than I did. Chapter 31, Fever. All through the starless night, your breath came in wispy gasps as raindrops wriggled like silver snakes through the gaps in our tent. When I rubbed mosquito repellent on your skin, your eyelids fluttered open, but you were too tired to shove me away. I would have given anything to see you throw a tantrum or complained. I mashed a bit of the last blackened limp banana between your fingers, my fingers, and you swallowed a few small bites. Then you sipped some water. Before I could rejoice, thinking you were on the mend, you clutched your stomach, crawled a few feet away, retched, and threw up. Muthu stirred awake, and his eyes had a glazed, feverish look. Look at him, I said to Arul. Now Muthu's ill, too. I'm just too full to move after that fine meal we had last night, Muthu joked, though his voice was softer than usual. You three stay here, Arul said. I'll work alone today. One person can't make enough to feed 4 mouths, even on a good day, I said. I'll go. I'd never left you with anyone else before, but we had no choice. Muthu was shivering. He definitely needed rest. What a call, Muthu said. You're missing the fresh air around the dump so much you want to work today? I forced a smile. When Ruku's better, we'll start up the necklace business again, and then we'll make enough money so we can take a holiday and both of you can just play together for a whole week. No, Akal, Muthu grinned weakly at me. If you kept me from working that long, I'd fall ill from shock. Arul's face was too grimly set to smile. Arul led me to a lot between 2 tumble-down houses where people had thrown trash after the holiday. Gullies of water ran down the sides of the enormous garbage pile into an ocean of water that looked and smelled like raw sewage. Useless burned-out fireworks bobbed up in it, but I spotted a precious bottle poking out of the trash mound. I bunched up my skirt, tied up the hem around my waist, and waded through the water toward the bottle. A while later, Kumar and the 2 boys in his gang joined us. There's that brat Shritter, so I could stay away from him. I craned my neck, searching for that rude boy. He's gone, Kumar said. Gone, I echoed. Happy to hear it. Gone where? Dead, Kumar said. Dead? I thought he was on holiday. Kumar gave a bitter laugh. He got sick from something, kept vomiting, and then, I'm so sorry. I looked down at the gray sludge into which my feet had sunk. I'm really, really sorry. Don't be. Kumar churned the filthy water with his stick. Kids die every day. You start feeling sorry, you'll drown. From what I'd seen of him, Shritter was selfish and mean. Still, he didn't deserve to die so young. It shocked me that someone like us could be here one day and dead the next. Arul put an arm around Kumar's shoulder. For a long moment they stood together, still as gravestones, any rivalry forgotten. Then they moved apart, and we went to work, trying to dredge out at least a few bottles or tins from the sea of sewage. And guys, a rivalry would be the battle between them or any kind of competition between them. That's what they're talking about there.